Camphor helped save the elephants and let Hollywood make their films. We do not hear much about it today, but this fragrant substance used to be a critical ingredient in Western industrial production, and almost all of it came from Taiwan, then a Japanese colony. The Taiwanese camphor monopoly was immensely profitable for the Japanese government, but its toll on the environment and the Formosan natives was devastating. And Japan's grip on this critical industrial substance alarmed the Western powers and caused them to scramble for an alternative. It was not until the synthesis of a synthetic that the West broke the camphor tree monopoly. In this video, we will look back at one of Taiwan's bygone industries. But first, I want to take the time to ask you to subscribe to the Asianometry newsletter. It's a great way to stay in touch with the channel. The newsletter helps get you started with some of the best hits along with new commentary. For example, check out the letters on TSMC and their decision to enter the China market, or my recounting of the history of the Hakka people's conflict with the Punti in Guangdong. All great reads. You can find the link to the newsletter in the video description below, or you can just go to Asianometry.com. You can expect a new newsletter every 4 days at 1 a.m. Taiwan time. Much thanks. So what is camphor? Camphor is a waxy, transparent solid with a strong smell. The word is an old one, and its etymology goes all the way back to the Austronesian word kapor. It comes from the camphor tree, a certain evergreen tree with many species. You chip off the wood and leaves, and then you steam it like a xiaolong bao. What can you use this thing for? At first, camphor's primary use was as a medicine and insect repellent. There is a brand of stuff today called salonpas that you put on your skin when your muscles get sore. But beginning in the 1850s, camphor began to gain prominence for its role in the production of celluloid, probably the first man-made plastic. Manufacturers use celluloid like an ivory replacement in items such as billiard and ping pong balls. Celluloid not only helped to save the lives of many a pachyderm, but also billiards itself. The billiard industry needed such an ivory replacement so badly that they offered a $200,000 reward for its discovery, though it seems like it was not claimed by John Wesley Hyatt, the man who economized the production of celluloid. Afterwards, celluloid found an even more valuable use: film and photography stock. Its ability to produce a photograph image whilst also being flexible enough to put into a spool was a critical step towards making longer movies. Because of it, the motion pictures industry as we know it today became technically viable. As Hollywood grew in popularity, so did celluloid, and the use of camphor to make it. Celluloid's downside, of course, was its legendary flammability. It basically self-combusts when exposed to temperatures over 150 degrees Celsius. A problem because movie projectors and their big hot bulbs. Infamously, almost all of Fox Corporation's silent film repertoire burned up in a 1947 vault fire. Same with MGM with a 1965 fire. They used to use celluloid to make shirt collars, keeping them straight. But because celluloid is so flammable, wearers had to be careful around cigars and lit flames. Ergo the phrase, "Don't get too hot under the collar." By the 1930s, camphor usage was 80% for celluloid and film, 10% for medicine, 6% for religious ceremonies, and the rest for various other things like gunpowder. All of this thanks to a tree. Camphor was the rare earth mineral of its day. As I mentioned, the camphor tree is native to many locations, but large old-age natural groves of the tree were long extinguished or unsuitable for use. The only remaining location with trees suitable for making industrial-grade camphor was in Taiwan's wild northeast. Taiwanese aboriginals noticed the tree's medicinal properties, its unique smell, and thus worshipped it. Chinese merchants arriving in Taiwan during the 15th century also observed the tree's valuable properties and began exporting it to the mainland for sale. By the time the Qing emperors took possession of the island in the 1680s, mass conflicts in the island's northeast border areas were already taking place. The Han Chinese settlers were pushing the Taiwanese aboriginals from their native lands deeper into new and unsettled territories. They would build these large stoves to cook and process the camphor trees into the final substance. It smelled pretty bad and was vulnerable to attack. The burgeoning camphor trade only exacerbated these clashes. Partly to calm those tensions and to get their cut as well, the Qing government declared the first camphor monopoly on Taiwan in the early 1700s. They enforced it with blood. In 1720, records show that 200 violators were convicted of defying the monopoly and had their heads cut off for punishment. In the 1850s, celluloid and its connection to camphor was discovered, and Western merchants rushed to Taiwan to harvest the camphor forests. Briefly, the Americans had the first step, receiving a concession from the Qing to handle the camphor export trade. They dredged out the Tainan port, raised a lighthouse, and fought off a series of attacks by enraged aboriginals for harvesting their forests. But 87 boats soon filled up with camphor wood, and a rich American industry sprung up. America's first ambassador to Japan, Townsend Harris, urged the United States government to acquire Taiwan Island from the Qing in order to secure the lucrative camphor supply. The idea was never seriously considered due to the impending American Civil War, but that would have been fun to imagine. In 1895, Japan acquired the island from the Qing emperors and sought to remake the colony into an agricultural and natural resource breadbasket. The government passed a new ordinance shuffling control of the camphor monopoly into a new Bureau of Monopolies, alongside the alcohol and tobacco monopolies. I talked a bit about this move in my video about the Taiwanese North-South divide. Prices for natural camphor began rising, doubling in the years after this reform. Of course, the main reason for this monopoly was to maximize revenue and squeeze the market. Japan had incurred a great deal of war debt from the Russo-Japanese War and had to pay it off. Taiwan, as a Japanese colony, needed to do its part. But there was another reason to regulate the harvest. Camphor trees take a long time to grow to the harvesting stage, a minimum of 45 years or so. The Taiwan government planted new trees for each one cut down, 5.6 million new trees in 1909 alone, but the long growing time threatened the industry's future without some form of government intervention and regulation. In 1899, the Aboriginal conflicts went to a whole new level. Camphor production had passed from random small firms to large multinational companies. The monopoly was a big government business, and the government needed to protect the company workers as they harvested the forests. 1,500 government-funded paramilitary troops were stationed at the Japanese indigenous borders. The various neighboring tribes unified into a single coordinated fighting force and stepped up their guerrilla attacks on the loggers. In 1896, 62 people died in indigenous raids. 2 years later, that number had risen to 557 dead and 134 injured, with attacks taking place almost every day. The year 1900 saw a full-scale Aboriginal uprising in what is now the Dashi district in Taoyuan. The Dashi area had the Dahan Creek, which helped transport harvested trees. The area was also heavily settled by the Aboriginal Atayal people. The Atayal are a fierce people known for their skilled warriors and head-hunting traditions. If a male fighter brought back a head from their forays, then they would get a facial tattoo. Women got their facial tattoos for showing exemplary skills in weaving, considered just as valuable. They are certainly known for more than this, but in the context of this story, this is all I have time to provide. The Japanese gathered a literal army in Dashi to invade the Atayal lands and pacify them. The two biggest Atayal groups forged an alliance to repel this invasion and armed themselves with guns. The two clashed in August 1900. The Japanese invasion force of 400 people marched on a large village, but as they approached, they found themselves attacked by Atayal warriors. Caught in a pincer movement, they had to fall back. The next day, they came with artillery and attempted to shell the tribe into submission, but a fighting band of 200 warriors ambushed them, forcing a retreat. The Dashi Atayal in the long run could not win the war, but their high-altitude guerrilla attacks continually forced the conventional Japanese armies into retreat. It would take several more years of high-explosive shelling, economic blockades, and transfer payments to pacify relations between the Japanese and Aboriginals. These conflicts are worthy of another video, but that is all we can do for now. Natural camphor's high monopoly prices incentivize the creation of a synthetic or natural alternative. All over the world, attempts were made to break the lucrative Japanese monopoly. At first, industrialists sought an alternate place to grow camphor trees. Plantations were started in Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Egypt, Italy, Spain, and Australia. Within the United States itself, attempts were made to grow camphor trees in Florida, Texas, Louisiana, and California, all with little success. Taiwanese camphor trees were brought over to the then colony of Mauritius, but the trees failed to yield in economic amounts. 10% of them failed to produce usable camphor, and the camphor trees native to that area produced a form of camphor that was not suitable for industry. Suitable natural camphor could not be found outside of Taiwan, so synthetics had to be formulated. One was finally worked out shortly before the outbreak of World War I from a chemical precursor to turpentine called pinene. This would be produced from America's plentiful pine trees. However, this early chemical process was complicated and expensive. The process had many steps. Its byproducts cannot be recycled, making it environmentally unfriendly, and further refining was required to separate the target camphor chemical. It prevented the synthetic from fully taking over the market. Nevertheless, a company in Germany began ramping up the production of synthetic camphor, making 600 tons a year of the stuff. This new entrant into the market broke the monopoly, and the Japanese Monopoly Bureau was forced to reduce prices from nosebleed levels. For the reasons I listed above, though, natural camphor kept a foothold in the market, and prices stayed high as $3.55 per pound. Then, in 1930, the American company DuPont, along with researchers in the Soviet Union, discovered that turpentine can be directly converted into camphor through the use of a catalyst, an introduced substance that transformed a chemical into another without itself being affected. This catalyst was Fuller's earth, a type of dry clay, and later switched to titanium dioxide, which further improved the process yield. This revolutionized the process of synthesizing camphor and disrupted the natural camphor industry. A plant in New Jersey on the Delaware River started up, producing 4.5 million pounds of synthetic camphor. Prices crashed to $0.44 per pound in 1944, and the Taiwanese camphor tree industry collapsed. In the 1960s, the film industry switched to acetate film stock, and the last great usage of celluloid went away for good. The billiard ball industry had switched to using bakelite in the 1920s. Today, celluloid is useful mostly for musical instruments like guitar picks. Camphor itself is still useful as an insect repellent, and for that I am thankful. But today, the chemical is nowhere as necessary to modern industry as it used to be. Reflecting now on this industry long after its rise and fall, it is kind of weird that some of the West's great growth tech industries, celluloid and film, depended almost entirely on the exploitation of a single type of tree on a tiny island. As they say in technology, the Stone Age did not end because they ran out of stones. In the early 1930s, right on the eve of the synthetic camphor revolution, Japanese analysts calculated that Taiwan's camphor forests still had 75 years of supply left for the market, as long as market demand held up as before, of course, which it did not. For those technologists and industrialists who think that the good old days will never end, the breaking of Formosa's camphor tree monopoly stands as a lesson that sometimes things do change, and can change forever. Pictures and video from the National Museum in Nanmen, once the largest camphor processing factory in the world. Thanks to my two friends for coming out to visit it with me. Alright, that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching. If you want more content, feel free to hit up the email newsletter and sign up. Or check out the Patreon if you want to support the work I do and watch any of the early access videos. If you want to drop a line and say hello, then you can email me too at john@asianometry.com. I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. Until next time, see you later.